Lyra pressed her small blue hand against the cold glass of the observation window. Outside, a million stars burned in the darkness. Each one held secrets. Each one held stories. But the story she loved most was the one nobody believed. She was young for a barely 40 cycles old. Her skin was the color of pale sky, and her large silver eyes could see things others missed. She had spent her whole life on Seven, a space station floating at the edge of known space. It was home to 3,000, a peaceful people who loved knowledge more than anything else. Lyra was a scholar. She studied old things, dead languages, forgotten wars, lost civilizations, but one subject made her heart beat faster than all others: humans. The old records spoke of them in strange ways. They called humans the warriors who came from nowhere. They said humans appeared 300 years ago during the Great Collapse, when the galaxy was burning and empires were falling. According to the ancient texts, humans fought battles that should have been impossible to win. They protected species they had never met. They died for people who were not their own. But most thought these stories were just myths, bedtime tales, pretty lies told to children to make them brave. Lyra did not think they were lies. She had read every record. She had studied every source. The details were too specific. The accounts came from too many different places. Something real was hiding behind the legends. Today was the day she would prove it. The council chamber was a large, round room in the center of the station. 12 elders sat in a half-circle, their faces serious and tired. They had governed Seven for many years. They did not like new ideas. They did not like young scholars who asked too many questions. Lyra stood before them, her data tablet shaking slightly in her hands. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "Honored elders," she said, "I have spent 10 years studying the historical records of the Great Collapse. I believe I have found proof that humans were real." The elders looked at each other. Some of them smiled in a way that was not kind. "Humans," said Elder Morn, the oldest of them all. His voice was dry like dead leaves. "You waste our time with children's stories." "They are not stories," Lyra said. She touched her tablet and a hologram appeared in the air. It showed an old star map with markings she had translated. "This is a navigation chart from the archives. It shows a route to a planet called Earth, the of humans." "The archives are full of errors," said another elder. "Everyone knows this." "But I found the same coordinates in 3 other sources," Lyra replied. "The shipping logs, the Merchant Guild records from Station 12, and the personal diary of Ambassador who lived during the collapse." She showed them image after image. Battle reports that mentioned human soldiers, trade agreements signed by human captains, medical records describing human biology. The evidence was everywhere, scattered across hundreds of years and dozens of archives. The elders watched with empty eyes. They did not care. "Enough," said Elder Morn. He raised one thin hand. "Young scholar, you have shown us old papers and older rumors. None of this proves anything. Humans are a myth, a story created by frightened people during a frightening time, nothing more." "But the evidence is not evidence, it is wishful thinking." Elder Morn leaned forward. "Let me tell you something, child. I have lived for 320 cycles. I have traveled to 100 worlds. I have met thousands of species, and I have never seen a human. No one has, because they do not exist." The other elders nodded in agreement. The decision was made before Lyra even finished speaking. "Your thesis is rejected," Elder Morn announced. "You will not speak of this again. Focus your talents on useful research. Stop chasing ghosts." Lyra wanted to argue. She wanted to shout, but her voice died in her throat. She bowed her head and left the chamber in silence. The corridor outside was empty and cold. Lyra walked slowly, her footsteps echoing against the metal floor. She had worked so hard. She had been so sure, and they had dismissed her like she was nothing. That did not go well. The voice came from behind her. Lyra turned and saw Elder standing in a doorway. He was old, even older than Elder Morn, but his eyes were warm and kind. He had been her teacher when she was young. He had given her her first history book. "They did not even listen," Lyra said. Her voice was thick with disappointment. "No," agreed, "they did not." He walked closer and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "But that does not mean you are wrong." Lyra looked up at him. "Do you believe me?" Was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a low voice as if sharing a secret. "When I was very young, barely 20 cycles old, I was traveling with my father on a cargo ship. We were passing through the outer rim when our engines failed. We drifted for days. We thought we would die." He paused, his silver eyes distant with memory. Then a ship appeared. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, small and fast and covered in strange markings. It pulled us to safety, repaired our engines, gave us food and water, and then it left without asking for anything in return. "What kind of ship was it?" Lyra asked. "I saw the crew through a window," said. "Just for a moment they looked strange, soft skin, small eyes, 5 fingers on each hand." He smiled sadly. "I told everyone what I saw. No one believed me. They said I was dreaming. They said the stress had affected my mind. After a while I stopped talking about it." Lyra's heart was beating fast. "You saw humans." "I believe I did," squeezed her shoulder. "I have waited my whole life to meet someone else who believes. Do not give up, Lyra. The truth does not care if people believe it. It remains true anyway." He turned and walked away, leaving Lyra alone with her thoughts. That night Lyra returned to the observation window. She pressed her hand against the glass and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the darkness, humans were real. She knew it. She felt it in her bones. But knowing was not enough. She needed proof, real proof, the kind that even Elder Morn could not ignore. She made a silent promise to herself. She would find the truth about humans. No matter how long it took, no matter how hard it was, she would prove to everyone that the legends were real. She did not know that the proof was already coming, racing toward her through the black ocean of space, bringing with it a danger greater than anything she had ever imagined. And 4 warriors who would change everything she believed about courage, sacrifice, and hope. The stars burned cold and bright. Lyra watched them and waited for something she could not name. Soon she would not have to wait any longer. The alarm came without warning. Lyra was in the archives, surrounded by old books and glowing data screens when the lights turned red. A deep horn sound filled the station, shaking the walls. She had never heard that sound before, but she knew what it meant. Every child learned about the emergency signals. This one was the worst of all. Enemy attack. She ran through the corridors toward the main observation deck. Others were running too, their faces pale with fear. Some were crying. Some were praying to gods they had forgotten. The station shook as something large and heavy struck the outer hull. When Lyra reached the observation deck, she stopped breathing. The sky was full of ships. They were black and twisted, like insects made of metal. Hundreds of them hung in the darkness, blocking out the stars. Their hulls were covered in sharp spines and glowing red lights. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding 7 like predators circling wounded prey. Someone whispered behind her, "They have found us." Lyra felt ice spread through her chest. She had read about everyone had. They were the monsters that parents warned their children about. A species of brutal creatures who traveled from system to system, conquering and enslaving everything in their path. They had destroyed 12 civilizations in the past 10 years. They showed no mercy. They took no prisoners. They harvested the populations of entire planets for food and labor. And now they were here. The station's communication system crackled to life. A voice came through the speakers, harsh and clicking, translated into by the station's computers. "Creatures of the station, you are surrounded, your weapons are weak, your ships are few, you cannot escape, you cannot fight, You have two choices: surrender and serve us, or resist and be harvested. You have one rotation to decide." The message ended. Silence filled the observation deck. Elder Morn appeared on a platform above the crowd. His face was gray. His hands were shaking. He tried to speak, but his voice came out as a whisper. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Citizens of Seven, we face a great danger. The council is discussing our options. Please remain calm. Return to your homes. We will update you when we know more." But Lyra could see the truth in his eyes. There were no options. They had no army. They had 5 old patrol ships with weak weapons. They had 200 warships, each one built for killing. The math was simple. They could not fight. They could not run. Their only choice was between slavery and death. The crowd broke apart slowly. People moved like ghosts, their eyes empty, their hopes crushed. Lyra stayed at the window, watching the black ships circle like hungry birds. She found Elder in his quarters an hour later. He was sitting in his old chair, looking at a faded picture. It showed a young standing next to a strange ship with unfamiliar markings. "The ship that saved you," Lyra said quietly. Nodded. "I kept this picture for 200 years. Everyone told me it was a dream. Sometimes I believed them." He set the picture down gently. "But it was not a dream. I know what I saw." "What do we do now?" Lyra asked. Her voice sounded small and lost. "I do not know," admitted. "The council is talking about surrender. They think they will let us live as slaves. They are wrong. They do not keep slaves. They use them until they break, and then they consume them." Lyra sat down heavily on the floor. "Then we are going to die." "Perhaps," was quiet for a moment. Then he said something strange. "I read a human phrase once in one of the old texts. It said, 'Hope is the last thing to die.' Hope will not stop the—" "No, but hope is why we keep fighting even when we cannot win. It is why we look for light even in the darkest night." He looked at her with his tired silver eyes. "Do you still believe humans are real, Lyra?" "Yes," she said, "I do." "Then hold on to that belief. Because if they are real, if they are out there somewhere, maybe they will come. Maybe they will help us. Maybe the legends are true." Lyra wanted to believe him, but she looked out the window at the army of black ships and saw no hope at all. The hours passed slowly. The station fell into a heavy silence. People hugged their families. Some wrote final messages to loved ones on distant worlds. Others simply sat and waited for the end. Lyra returned to the observation deck as the deadline approached. She wanted to see the stars one last time before everything changed. The ship still circled outside, patient and terrible. Then the sensors beeped. A technician looked at his screen and frowned. "That cannot be right." "What is it?" another asked. "I am detecting another ship, coming from uncharted space, very fast." His frown deepened. "Very, very fast." Lyra moved closer to the window. At first she saw nothing. Then a tiny dot of light appeared among the stars, growing larger with each second. It was a ship, small and sleek, with smooth curves and no visible weapons. It moved like nothing Lyra had ever seen, dancing through the gaps between warships as if they were standing still. They fired at it. Red beams of energy cut through the darkness, but the small ship twisted and rolled, avoiding every shot. It flew straight through the enemy fleet like water flowing around stones. The technician's voice was shaking. "It is requesting permission to dock." Nobody answered. Nobody moved. They were all staring at the impossible ship that had just flown through 200 warships without being touched. "The markings," someone said. "What do the markings mean?" Lyra looked closer. The ship's hull was covered in strange symbols she did not recognize. But then her memory stirred. She had seen those symbols before, in the old archives, in the pictures from the Great Collapse. Her heart stopped. "I know those markings," she whispered. Her voice grew louder. "I know those markings." Everyone turned to look at her. "That is a human ship." Silence, complete total silence. Then the airlock began to open. Lyra pushed through the crowd running toward the docking bay. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she did not stop. She had waited her whole life for this moment. She had dreamed of it, prayed for it, argued for it until everyone thought she was crazy. She reached the docking bay just as the ship's door slid open. 4 figures stepped out into the light. They were tall and strange, with soft pale skin and small round eyes. They wore dark armor covered in symbols and lights. Their faces were calm and serious. They moved with a confidence that seemed impossible for creatures standing in the shadow of death. The leader was a male with short black hair and steady dark eyes. He looked at the crowd frightened and spoke. "My name is Captain of the ship Horizon's Edge. We are humans." Lyra felt tears running down her cheeks. She did not try to stop them. The legends were real. The humans had come. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 3,000 stared at the 4 strangers like they were ghosts walking out of an old story. Lyra pushed forward through the crowd until she stood at the front. Her heart was beating so hard she could hear it in her ears. The humans were right there, close enough to touch. Real, solid, alive. The leader looked around the docking bay with calm, dark eyes. He was tall, taller than any, with broad shoulders and a strong jaw. His armor was scratched and worn, showing signs of many battles. Behind him stood 3 others, equally strange and equally real. The first was a woman with long black hair tied in a tight braid. Her eyes were sharp like a blade, and she stood with the easy balance of a fighter. Her hand rested on a weapon at her hip, not threatening but ready. The second was a man with a kind face and clever eyes. He carried a bag full of tools, and his fingers twitched like he was always thinking about something mechanical. The third was another woman, shorter than the others, with a gentle smile that seemed out of place in such a terrible moment. She wore a white band on her arm marked with a red symbol. Stepped forward and spoke again. His voice was deep and steady. "We picked up your distress signal 3 days ago. We came as fast as we could." He looked at the frightened faces around him. "I understand you are facing the fleet." Elder Morn pushed through the crowd, his old face twisted with confusion and fear. "What are you? Where did you come from?" "We are humans," repeated patiently. "Survivors from the colony ship Eternal Dawn. Our ancestors fled the core worlds during the Great Collapse. We have lived in the outer regions ever since, far from the main trade routes." "Humans are myths," Elder Morn said. His voice was shaking. "Stories you cannot be real." The woman with the braid laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "We get that a lot." Silenced her with a look. "We are real, Elder, very real, and we are here to help." "Help?" Elder Morn gestured toward the window where the fleet waited. "How can 4 people help against that? There are 200 warships out there. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We have nothing." "You have us," said simply. The crowd murmured. Some looked hopeful. Others looked like they thought the humans were insane. Lyra finally found her voice. "Captain, my name is Lyra. I am a scholar. I have studied human history for 10 years. I believed you were real when no one else did." She paused, struggling to find the right words. "Why did you come? You do not know us. You owe us nothing. Why risk your lives for strangers?" Looked at her for a long moment. Something changed in his eyes, something soft and sad. "Because that is what humans do," he said. "We protect people who cannot protect themselves. We fight battles that are not ours. We have always been this way. It is in our blood." He turned and gestured to his crew. "This is my second-in-command and combat specialist, Park Wu, our engineer, and our medic." Each one nodded as their name was called. His nod was sharp and quick. Wu's was friendly and slightly distracted, was warm and gentle. 4 people, Elder Morn repeated. He sounded like he was going to be sick. 4 people against 200 warships. This is madness. This is suicide. "Maybe," admitted, but we have faced worse odds before." "And won?" someone in the crowd asked. Smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side. "We are still here, are we not?" Looked around the docking bay, studying the faces of the— "I will not lie to you. The situation is bad. They are dangerous. Many of you may die in the coming battle, but if you do nothing, all of you will die. Or worse, you will be taken, used, broken." His voice hardened. "I have seen what they do to their prisoners. Death is better." The crowd was silent. "We are offering you a choice," continued. "You can surrender and hope for mercy from creatures who have none, or you can fight beside us and take back your fate with your own hands." "But we do not know how to fight," a young said. "We are scholars, traders. We have never held weapons." Stepped forward. Her voice was soft and calm. "We will teach you. We do not have much time, but we will teach you everything we can." "Why?" The question came from Elder, who had appeared at the edge of the crowd. His old eyes were fixed on with an intensity that Lyra had never seen before. "Why would you die for us? There must be a reason. No one does something like this for nothing." Was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke slowly, as if choosing each word with care. 300 years ago, when our ancestors fled the dying core worlds, they were lost. Their navigation systems were damaged. They drifted for weeks without food, without hope. They thought they were going to die in the empty dark between stars." He paused. "Then a ship found them, a small merchant vessel from a species they had never met. The crew of that ship gave them food, water, medicine. They repaired the damaged systems, and they gave our ancestors coordinates to a habitable planet where they could start again." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. She knew what he was going to say before he said it. "The crew of that ship were," said. "They saved our ancestors. They asked for nothing in return. We never forgot." Elder let out a long, shaky breath. Tears were forming in his silver eyes. "I knew it," he whispered. "I always knew." "Your people gave us a future," said. "Now we are here to return the favor." The silence that followed was different from before. It was not the silence of fear or shock. It was the silence of something changing, something waking up. Lyra felt it in her chest, a tiny spark of warmth in the cold darkness. "Hope." She stepped forward and stood beside the humans. "I will fight." Elder moved to join her. "So will I." One by one, others stepped forward, young and old, scholars and workers. They gathered around the four humans like water flowing toward a flame. Elder Morn watched with a pale face. "This is foolish," he said. "You will all die." Looked at him without anger or judgment. "Perhaps, but we will die free, and we will make the pay for every life they take." He turned to face the crowd of volunteers. "We have work to do. They gave us one rotation before their deadline ends. We will use every second of that time. Wu, start working on the defense grid. Gather everyone who is willing to fight. Set up medical stations throughout the station." The three humans nodded and began to move. They followed them, uncertain but willing. Looked at Lyra. "You said you studied human history, then you know what we are capable of." "Yes," Lyra said. "The legends say you fought impossible battles, that you never gave up, that you were the most stubborn species in the galaxy." Allowed himself a small smile. "The legends are true." He walked toward the command center and Lyra followed. Behind them, the station began to transform. Fear was giving way to purpose. Despair was giving way to determination. The battle had not yet begun, but something had already changed. They were no longer alone. And they had no idea what was coming for them. The hours before battle moved like a strange dream. Everything happened too fast and too slow at the same time. Park Wu took over the station's control room within minutes of arriving. His clever fingers danced across the old computer systems, pulling up screens and reading code like it was his native language. The technicians watched him with wide eyes, struggling to keep up. Your defense grid is outdated, Wu said, not unkindly. But the bones are good. The basic structure is solid. I can work with this. What are you going to do? Asked a young technician named Ren. Wu grinned. It was the grin of someone who loved puzzles and problems. I am going to make your station very, very unfriendly to anyone trying to break in. He worked without rest for 18 hours straight. They brought him food. He forgot to eat it. They brought him water. He drank it without looking up from his screens. His fingers never stopped moving. He the old sensors to work as targeting arrays. He rerouted power from non-essential systems to strengthen the shields. He found hidden weapons in storage that they had forgotten existed and brought them back online. How do you know all this? Ren asked at one point. Humans learn by doing, Wu answered. We break things, we fix them, we break them again. Eventually we understand how they work. He paused to wipe sweat from his forehead. Also, I have been fixing ships since I was 8 years old. My father was an engineer. His father was an engineer. It runs in the family. In another part of the station, gathered the volunteers who were willing to fight. There were about 200 of them, a mix of ages and backgrounds. None of them had ever held a weapon before. Looked at them with her sharp blade-like eyes. She did not smile. I am not going to lie to you, she said. You are not soldiers. You will never be soldiers. We do not have enough time to train you properly. Many of you will be afraid. Many of you will make mistakes. The volunteers shifted nervously. But none of that matters, continued. Because they expect you to be weak. They expect you to surrender or run. They have never faced people who chose to fight back. She pulled a small energy pistol from her belt and held it up. This is a weapon. It is simple. Point at the enemy. Press this button. The enemy falls. Do not think about anything else. Do not try to be heroes. Just point and press. She spent the next several hours teaching them basic movements. How to take cover. How to move in groups. How to watch each other's backs. They were clumsy at first, tripping over their own feet, dropping their weapons, bumping into walls. Was patient. She corrected them gently but firmly. She never raised her voice. She never showed frustration. An old named Mara approached her during a break. You seem different from the stories, Mara said. The legends say humans were fierce warriors who loved battle, but you are calm, quiet. Considered this. The fiercest warriors are always calm, she said. Anger makes you sloppy, fear makes you weak. True strength comes from stillness. Are you not afraid? There are 200 warships outside. Of course I am afraid. His voice was soft. Only fools feel no fear, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. It is choosing to stand when everything tells you to run. Mara looked at her with new understanding. You have done this before, fought impossible battles. Many times. Eyes grew distant. Humans have always faced impossible odds. Our history is full of moments when we should have died but did not. We survived plagues that killed millions, wars that burned our cities, disasters that should have ended us. She looked at Mora directly. We are still here. That should tell you something. Meanwhile, set up medical stations throughout the station. She moved through the corridors with her gentle smile, organizing supplies and training volunteers in basic first aid. She found frightened children hiding in the lower levels and sat with them for a while, telling them stories about the stars. She held the hands of elderly who were too scared to eat. She cleaned wounds and dried tears and never once lost her patience. A young mother named watched work and finally asked the question that had been bothering her. How can you be so calm? How can you smile when death is waiting outside? Thought about it for a moment. Because fear helps no one, she said. If I am afraid, others become more afraid. If I am calm, others find calm too. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. My job is to save lives. I cannot do that if I am shaking with terror. But you are just one person. There are thousands of us. Then I will save as many as I can, one at a time. smiled again, and this time understood that the smile was not ignorance or foolishness. It was armor. It was strength. Lyra spent most of her time with Captain. She followed him through the station as he checked on preparations, asked questions about defenses, and spoke with volunteers. She asked him endless questions about human history, human biology, human culture. Answered everything patiently. He told her about Earth, the human, a planet covered in water and green-growing things. He told her about human wars, conflicts that lasted for years and killed millions. He told her about human science, art, music, love. "But why do you fight so hard?" Lyra asked. "You could have stayed hidden, safe in your distant colony. Why come here to die?" Stopped walking. They were in a quiet corridor far from the noise of preparations. He turned to face her. "Do you know where humans evolved?" he asked. "Earth," Lyra said. "A Class M planet in the outer arm of the galaxy." "Earth is what we call a death world," said. "Everything on our planet tries to kill us. The weather, the animals, the diseases, even the plants are dangerous. We evolved fighting for survival every single day." Lyra had read something similar in the old texts, but hearing say it made it feel real. "That is why we are the way we are," continued. "We are not stronger than other species. We are not faster or smarter, but we do not give up, ever. It is built into our bones. When we face danger, we do not run. We dig in. We adapt. We find a way. Even when there is no way." Especially then, his eyes were steady and serious. "The universe has tried to kill us many times. It has always failed. We are still here, and we will still be here long after they are forgotten." Lyra felt something stirring in her chest. It was not just hope anymore. It was something stronger, something that burned like fire. "I want to be like that," she said quietly. "I want to fight like you do." Studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "You already are," he said. "You believed in us when no one else did. You stood up against your elders and defended the truth. That takes courage." He put a hand on her shoulder. "The battle ahead will be hard. Many will fall, but if you keep that fire burning inside you, you will survive. And you will help others survive too." The station's lights flickered. The deadline was approaching. Straightened and checked his weapon. "It is time." All around the station, and humans gathered their courage. Fear was still there, but it was smaller now, pushed aside by something greater. They were ready. The impossible battle was about to begin. The attack at dawn. There was no sun near 7, no real day or night, but the station kept a clock based on the old. When that clock struck the first hour of morning, the fleet moved. Lyra was at the observation window when the first wave came. Dozens of boarding ships broke from the main fleet, racing toward the station like black insects swarming toward food. Their engines burned red in the darkness. The station's alarm screamed. Red lights filled every corridor. Ran to their positions, clutching weapons they had never used, praying to gods they barely believed in. Park Woo sat in the control room, his hands steady on the controls. "Come on," he muttered. "Come a little closer." The boarding ships reached the outer defense zone. Woo pressed a button. Hidden turrets opened fire. Beams of energy cut through space like burning swords. 3 boarding ships exploded instantly, their pieces spinning into the void. 2 more collided while trying to avoid the fire and broke apart. Yes, the technicians cheered. But Woo did not smile. That was just the first wave. More are coming. He was right. They adjusted quickly. More boarding ships launched, moving in zigzag patterns to avoid the turrets. Some of them made it through. Their claws bit into the station's hull, cutting through metal like paper. The first breach happened in Sector 7. Lyra heard the explosion from 3 corridors away. Then she heard the screaming. She ran toward the sound, not away from it. She did not know why. Her legs moved on their own. She turned a corner and stopped cold. There were everything the legend said, and more. They were massive, nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in black armor that looked like it grew from their skin. They had 6 limbs, 4 for walking and 2 ending in razor-sharp claws that could cut through steel. Their heads were angular and cruel, with dozens of small red eyes and mandibles that dripped with something yellow and foul. 5 of them had broken through the hull. Defenders were falling back, firing wildly, missing most of their shots. Then appeared. She came from a side corridor, moving so fast she blurred. Her blade was in her hand, a thin curved sword that gleamed in the red emergency lights. The first did not even see her. One moment it was advancing. The next moment its head was rolling across the floor. Did not stop. She flowed from one enemy to the next like water running downhill. Her blade found gaps in their armor, soft spots between plates, the joints where limbs met bodies. She moved without wasted motion, every step and every strike perfectly planned. 12 seconds, 5 dead. Flicked the blood from her sword and looked at the stunned. "Do not freeze," she said. "Freezing gets you killed. Keep moving, keep shooting, watch each other." She disappeared down another corridor, hunting for more enemies. The battle spread across the entire station. In Sector 12, Park Woo remotely activated a series of traps he had set up. Corridors filled with superheated steam. Floors became electrically charged. Doors slammed shut and would not open again. Warriors died by the dozens, confused and trapped by technology they did not understand. In the medical bay worked without rest. Wounded poured in, some with burns, some with cuts, some with injuries that made Lyra look away. Treated them all, her hands steady, her voice calm, her smile never breaking. A massive explosion shook the station. The wall behind cracked, and a piece of metal the size of her arm flew toward her head. She twisted aside at the last moment, took a shallow cut across her shoulder and kept working. "You are hurt," an assistant said. "Later," replied. She finished bandaging the patient in front of her and moved to the next one. Blood ran down her arm and dripped onto the floor. She ignored it. In the central hub, Captain fought the battle differently. He did not dance like or hide like Wu. He stood in the open, weapon in hand, and faced the enemy head-on. The commander found him there. It was larger than the others, nearly 4 meters tall, with golden markings on its black armor. It moved with terrible purpose, crushing obstacles in its path. When it saw, it made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "Little creature," the translator rendered its speech. "You think you can stand against me? I have killed thousands. I have broken armies. You are nothing." Did not answer with words. He raised his weapon and fired. The shot hit the commander's shoulder, burning a hole through its armor. The creature screamed in rage and charged. Did not run, he stepped forward. They met in the center of the hub, human and monster, small and huge. The swung its massive claw, ducked under it, rolled, came up firing. Another shot, another wound. The commander screamed again and spun, its tail whipping around like a blade. Jumped over it. The fight lasted for 3 minutes. To Lyra, watching from behind a barricade, it felt like 3 hours, was faster than seemed possible for a creature his size. He dodged attacks that should have cut him in half. He found angles that should not have existed. He refused to fall. Finally, the commander made a mistake. It overreached with a killing blow, leaving its chest exposed for half a second. Took that half second. His weapon fired one last time, straight into the soft spot where the creature's head met its body. The commander fell like a mountain collapsing. Silence, then cheering. Who had been cowering behind cover stood up and shouted with joy. But did not celebrate. He was breathing hard, blood running from a cut on his forehead. He looked at the fallen commander for a long moment. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "The real battle is still ahead." He was right. They sent more waves, more soldiers, more ships. They were relentless, driven by hunger and hate. The station shook with explosions. Walls collapsed. Fires burned in corridors that had never seen violence before. The defenders died by the dozens, but for every who fell, 3 fell with them. The lessons taught them were working. They moved in groups. They watched each other's backs. They did not freeze. And always, always, the 4 humans were there. Wherever the fighting was worst, a human appeared, cutting through enemies like a storm of blades, Wu turning the station itself into a weapon, dragging wounded soldiers to safety with bullets flying around her head, standing firm against impossible odds. Lyra fought too. She did not think about it. She just acted. She fired her weapon at soldiers and saw some of them fall. She helped wounded reach the medical bay. She screamed in fear and rage and something that felt almost like joy. She was alive, she was fighting, she was not giving up. Just like the humans taught her. The battle raged for 6 hours. Both sides bled. Both sides suffered. The station burned and shook and screamed. But they did not break. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Word spread through the station like fire through dry grass. The commander was dead. The human captain had killed it with his own hands. Who had been hiding came out of their shelters. Workers who had never touched a weapon picked up guns from fallen soldiers. Old men and young children gathered in groups, ready to do whatever they could. Something had changed. Something had shifted in the air itself. Fear was still there, but it was no longer in control. Lyra saw it happening all around her. Who had been running away turned around and started running toward the fighting instead. Voices that had been crying were now shouting battle cries. Eyes that had been empty with despair were now burning with determination. She found Elder in the central corridor, an ancient energy pistol in his trembling hands. He was standing guard over a group of children, his silver eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. "Elder," Lyra said, "you should be somewhere safe." Laughed. It was a dry, crackling sound, but there was real joy in it. "I have waited my whole life to see if the legends were true. I saw them save my father's ship 200 years ago. Now I see them fighting for our station. There is nowhere else I would rather be." He raised his pistol as shadows moved in the corridor ahead. "Besides," he added, "I was a good shot once. Let us see if I still remember how." 3 warriors came around the corner, fired 3 times, 3 fell. Lyra stared at him. "I told you," said with a small smile, "I was good." The battle continued to rage, but the pattern was changing. They were not gaining ground anymore. They were holding, then retreating, then regrouping for another attack that failed. In the control room, Park Wu watched the enemy fleet on his screens. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, and his hands shook from exhaustion, but his mind was still sharp. "They are getting frustrated," he said to the technicians around him. "They expected this to be easy, quick. They did not expect to lose hundreds of soldiers to a bunch of scholars and 4 humans." "Can we win?" Ren asked. "Can we actually beat them?" Wu was quiet for a moment. "Maybe not," he admitted. "They still have ships. They can still send more soldiers. Eventually we will run out of ammunition, energy defenders." He paused. "But I have an idea." "What kind of idea?" "A dangerous one." He pulled up a diagram of the station's reactor core. It was the heart of 7, the thing that kept everyone alive. Without it, the station would die. "If I overload the reactor," Wu explained, "I can channel the energy into a single massive pulse. It would create an electromagnetic wave strong enough to disable every ship within range." Ren's eyes went wide. "That would kill the station too. We would lose all power." "For a while, yes, but I can set up emergency backups, enough to keep life support running for a few hours, long enough for us to restart the main systems." Wu's voice grew serious. "It is a gamble. If anything goes wrong, we all die. But if it works, the fleet will be helpless. Their ships will be dead in space." "And then what?" "Then we use the remaining turrets to pick them off one by one." Ren looked at the other technicians. They were scared. They were exhausted, but they were also alive, which was more than anyone had expected. "Do it," Ren said. "We trust you." Wu nodded and began working. Meanwhile, the fighting in the corridors reached its peak. Was everywhere at once. She appeared wherever the pushed hardest, wherever the lines were about to break. Her blade never stopped moving. She killed and killed and killed, and still there were more enemies coming. But she was not alone anymore. The fought beside her. They were clumsy and slow compared to her, but they were brave. They covered her flanks. They warned her of attacks coming from behind. They learned her rhythm and moved with it. Had turned the medical bay into a fortress. She had set up barricades made of beds and equipment. Wounded defenders with weapons lay behind them, ready to fight even while healing. When a group broke through the outer defenses and reached the medical bay, they found not helpless victims but 30 armed and one small human woman who refused to let any of them through. Fought with a small pistol in one hand and a medical knife in the other. She was not as deadly as, not as skilled as, but she did not need to be. She only needed to hold the line until help arrived. Help arrived. A group of volunteers charged into the medical bay from behind, catching them by surprise. The battle was short and brutal. When it was over, immediately went back to treating the wounded. Her hands were covered in blood, some of it blue blood, some of it the yellow ichor of the. She did not care. There were people who needed her. Captain made his way to the control room, cutting through enemy resistance like a blade through cloth. When he arrived, he found Wu working frantically at the main console. "Status demanded." "Almost ready," Wu replied. "2 more minutes to set up the pulse, maybe 3. "We may not have 3 minutes. They are preparing another wave." Wu's jaw tightened. "Then buy me time." Turned to face the corridor. Defenders gathered around him, maybe 40 of them, tired and wounded but still standing. "This is it," told them. "Everything comes down to the next few minutes. If we hold this position, we win. If we fail, everyone dies." He looked at their faces. Most of them were terrified, some were crying, none of them ran. "I am proud to fight beside you," said. "Whatever happens next, remember that you were brave. You faced impossible odds and did not break. That is something that we'll never understand." The sound of clicking legs echoed down the corridor. The final wave was coming. Raised his weapon, they did the same. "For 7, someone shouted. "For our families," another added. And then, unexpectedly, a third voice. "For the humans who came to save us." They appeared. Hundreds of them, packed tight in the corridor, a wave of black armor and red eyes and razor claws. They charged. The defenders fired. It was chaos, pure, screaming, bloody chaos. Bodies fell on both sides. Energy beams cut through the air. Claws ripped through armor. The corridor became a nightmare of violence and death. Lyra was there in the middle of it, firing until her weapon ran empty, then grabbing another from a fallen defender and firing again. She did not think. She just acted, just survived. Fought at the front, never retreating, taking wounds that would have killed anyone else and still standing. His face was a mask of blood and determination. 1 minute passed, then 2. Wu shouted into his communicator. "Now!" The world turned white. The pulse exploded outward from the station, a wave of pure electromagnetic force that swept through space like a cosmic scream. It passed through the fleet in seconds, frying circuits, overloading systems, killing engines. 200 warships went dark at the same time. They drifted in the void, powerless and helpless. Inside the station, the lights went out. The artificial gravity flickered. Everything stopped. Then slowly, the emergency backups kicked in. Dim red lights illuminated the corridors. Life support hummed back to life. Lyra opened her eyes. She was lying on the floor, covered in dust and debris. Her ears were ringing. Her body ached in 100 places. But she was alive. She pulled herself up and looked around. The in the corridor were dead or dying, their systems overwhelmed by the pulse. The defenders were getting to their feet, dazed but breathing. Was still standing. Somehow, impossibly, he was still standing. Did it work? Someone asked. Through the observation window, Lyra could see the answer. The fleet hung motionless in space, dead ships floating in the darkness. No lights, no movement, nothing. They had won. The first day after the battle was for the dead. They had lost 412 souls, young and old, scholars and workers, friends and strangers. They gathered in the main hall to speak their names and remember their lives. Lyra stood in the crowd, listening to the names being read. Some of them she knew. Mora, the old woman who had questioned about fear, gone now, killed defending the children's shelter. Ren, the young technician who had trusted Wu to save them. Alive but missing an arm, his future forever changed. The humans attended the ceremony. They stood together at the edge of the crowd, their faces solemn and respectful. When the names were finished, stepped forward and spoke. On Earth, he said, we have a tradition. When warriors fall in battle, we do not say they are gone. We say they live on in the hearts of those who remember them. He looked at the grieving. Your people died protecting each other, protecting their families, protecting their home. There is no greater honor. As long as you remember them, they will never truly be gone. The crowd was silent. Some were crying, some were nodding. All of them were listening. The second day was for the living. The fleet remained dead in space. Some ships had been destroyed by the station's remaining turrets. Others drifted away into the void. A few tried to send emergency signals, but their systems were too damaged. The survivors, trapped in their powerless ships, had only two choices: surrender or die slowly in the cold darkness. They chose surrender. Ships, repaired and refueled, flew out to collect prisoners. They were put in secure cells, stripped of their weapons, guarded day and night. They would be handed over to the Galactic Coalition for trial. Their conquests were over. The station slowly came back to life. Engineers repaired broken systems. Doctors treated the wounded. Workers cleared debris and patched holes in the hull. It would take months to fully recover, but the station would survive. The third day was for questions. Elder Morn, who had hidden in his quarters during the entire battle, emerged to address the council. He tried to speak about leadership and recovery and moving forward. The council voted to remove him. Elder, the old believer who had fought beside the young, was chosen to lead in his place. When they offered him the position, he laughed and accepted. I spent my whole life being called a fool for believing in humans, he said. Now the fools want me to be their leader. The universe has a strange sense of humor. On the fourth day, Lyra found Captain alone. He was sitting in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. His wounds had been treated, but he looked tired in a way that went deeper than his body. She sat down beside him without speaking. They watched the stars together for a long time. You are thinking about leaving, Lyra finally said. It was not a question. Yes, did not look at her. We have done what we came to do. Our colony needs us. Our families are waiting. Will you come back? I do not know. The universe is large. Time is short. There are other people who need help. Lyra felt a knot forming in her throat. She had known this moment would come, but it hurt more than she expected. Why do you do it? She asked. Why do you humans keep risking your lives for strangers? Was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. There is a word in our language. It does not translate perfectly. The closest meaning is something like duty, but it is more than that. It is the feeling that you are responsible for more than just yourself, that your life only has meaning if you use it to help others. That sounds exhausting. It is, smiled slightly. But it is also the best part of being human. We do not live forever. Our bodies break down. Our memories fade. but the people we help, the lives we save, the good we do in the world that continues long after we are gone." He finally turned to look at her. "You understand now, do you not? You felt it during the battle, the fire in your chest, the need to protect, to fight, to never give up." Lyra nodded. She did understand. She had felt it every moment since the humans arrived. "That feeling does not belong to humans alone," said. "It lives in everyone. Most people just forget how to find it. You found it. Your people found it. You do not need us anymore. But I want you to stay." The words came out before Lyra could stop them. She felt her cheeks grow warm. Smile became gentle. "We cannot stay, but we can give you something before we go." On the 5th day, the humans prepared to leave. Their ship, the Horizon's Edge, was repaired and refueled. The docking bay was crowded with who had come to say goodbye. Some of them were crying, some of them were waving, all of them were grateful. Stood at the airlock, looking at the crowd with her sharp eyes. "Try not to die without us," she said. It sounded like an insult, but Lyra could see the affection hidden underneath. Park Woo was talking excitedly with Ren and the other technicians. He was giving them plans for new defense systems, better shields, stronger weapons. "You have good instincts," he told them. "Just keep learning, keep building. You will be fine." Hugged every child she had met during the battle. She gave them small gifts, tiny carved figures she had made during the quiet hours. "Be brave," she told each one. "Be kind, be strong." Captain stood before Elder. "Thank you," said. His voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for proving that I was not crazy. Thank you for saving my people." "Your people saved themselves," replied. "We just showed them how." He shook his hand in the human way, grip firm, eyes steady. Then he turned to Lyra. She did not know what to say. All the words she had prepared seemed wrong now. She just stood there looking at him, trying to memorize his face. Appeared beside her and pressed something into her hand. It was a small data chip, smooth and cool. "This contains the true history of humanity," said. "Not legends, not myths, the real story, our wars, our failures, our triumphs, everything." Lyra stared at the chip like it was the most valuable thing in the universe. In a way, it was. "Tell our story," continued. "Share it with your people, with other species. Let them know that humans are real, and that we will come again if we are needed." "I will," Lyra promised. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I will tell everyone." Stepped forward and put a hand on her shoulder. "You are a good historian, Lyra, but you are something more important now. You are a witness. You saw what humans can do. You saw what your own people can do when they stop being afraid." He smiled one last time. "Do not let the galaxy forget." The humans boarded their ship. The airlock closed. The engines hummed to life. Lyra watched through the observation window as the Horizon's Edge pulled away from the station. It turned toward the distant stars, toward a home she could barely imagine, toward a future she would never see. Then it was gone. The crowd dispersed slowly. People returned to their lives, their jobs, their families. The station went back to normal, or as normal as anything could be after what had happened. But Lyra did not move. She stood at the window for hours, watching the stars, thinking about everything she had learned. The legends were real, humans were real, and they were not monsters or gods or fairy tales. They were just people. Strange, stubborn, impossible people who refused to give up no matter what. She looked down at the data chip in her hand. "Tell our story," had said. "Do not let the galaxy forget." Lyra returned to her work as a historian, but her purpose had changed. She was no longer trying to prove that humans existed. She was trying to make sure everyone knew what they were capable of. She wrote, she lectured. She traveled to other stations and other worlds, sharing the truth about the warriors who came from nowhere and saved people they had never met. Some people believed her, some did not. But the story spread anyway, passed from mouth to mouth, from world to world, growing bigger with each telling. Years passed, decades, centuries. Lyra grew old, her skin faded, her eyes dimmed, but she never stopped telling the story. And somewhere out there, among the distant stars, the humans were still out there too, still fighting, still protecting, still refusing to give up. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. Humans were not legends. They were something far greater. They were real. And they would always come back.